Hello everybody and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic, hope you're doing well, and today we're going to be talking about Hollywood and how modern Hollywood is a bit of a, let's just say, a trash fire. And this is something that is no surprise to anyone, but it is nice to know that there are at least a couple of actors that are actually willing to risk their own careers by actually speaking truth. It's amazing when an actor admits that, hey, actors act. And that means that they pretend. I know, quite a concept, and yet we have Andrew Garfield and Ian McKellen, Sir Ian McKellen, to thank for at least bringing some sanity to the discussion. That is not to say that they are perfect individuals, but it is still refreshing nonetheless for them to bring in these insights into these discussions, especially since both of them are, I would call, high profile, meaning that most people know at least who they are, especially Sir Ian McKellen. So before going any further, though, into this story from Bounding into Comics, please make sure you smash that like button, light up that fire button over on Odyssey, and also make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with that bell notification on. That way you know every time a new video or live stream goes live on the channel. I also upload to Minds.com and to Rumble as well. So again, wherever you want to watch videos about content like this, I have you covered, hopefully. But as we have from this headline from Bounding, it says, Andrew Garfield weighs in on Hollywood casting practices, warns about the death of imagination. And I think that that warning is one that really should be heeded by Hollywood. Now, John F. Trent in this article does a really good job breaking down what Andrew Garfield says, does a great job also bringing in some comments recently made by Sir Ian McKellen, and then also adds his own nuanced approach to it. I do disagree a little bit with the nuanced approach that he takes to some extent, which I'll get into once I actually cover his take on it, but I do think it's important to cover what Garfield and Sir Ian McKellen actually have said on the issue. It says, Spider-Man No Way Home and Hacksaw Ridge actor Andrew Garfield recently weighed in on Hollywood's current casting practices and the discussion surrounding whether or not certain actors can play certain characters. Speaking to The Telegraph about Tick Tick Boom, Garfield was asked about Hollywood's casting practices, whether or not straight actors can play gay characters. Garfield responded, I think it's two different conversations getting conflated, and I like how he has a very nuanced approach here. He says, one is about equality of opportunity, and I'm completely in on that, because we should want a world in which no matter what your sexual orientation, your color, or your heritage, everyone gets a fair whack, and that is something that I definitely do hold to, which is that we all are human beings, we all have human dignity, and we should therefore all be treated as such. And so I'm in agreement with him on that. He might be taking it in a different direction than what I would be taking it in, but I do think that all of us deserve to be treated, as far as our dignity as human persons is concerned, to be treated equally in that context. And so I think that that is definitely a good thing to first off distinguish, saying, hey, if we're talking about respecting human people for human beings as they are, this is one conversation, this is one thing, and it's really hard, I think, for a lot of people to really argue the opposite of that. But then he goes on, he says, but the other is about empathic imagination. And if we only allow people to be cast as exactly who they are, it'll be the death of it. And I think that that's actually a really good point. He goes on to say, so the two separate conversations have to happen simultaneously because I'm not willing to support the death of empathic imagination. It's what we need most as a culture, and it's beautiful. It's the only thing that's going to save us right now, he concluded. And what he means by that is that if we are not, as people, and especially as actors, able to put ourselves into the shoes of other people, if we are not able to, to take on certain aspects of other people, whether it be based on cultural lines, whether it be based on other things, then we're not going to have any idea about what their own experiences are, and it means that we're not going to be able to empathize with those people, right? It's kind of that mindset of something, an old adage, right, that we've all been told since we were children, walk a mile in someone else's shoes. Well, I think it's important for us to have that as an understanding, and I think that actors do a great job, or used to do a really good job of showcasing that, right? That you don't have to actually be every single thing that a certain character is supposed to be in order for you to portray that character, right? There was, of course, a lot of controversy more recently because of Helen Mirren taking on the role of Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir. And again, basically, there was this concept of Jew face being talked about there, and saying that, well, she can't play the character because she is not Jewish, and because they're doing this or that. And once again, it's taking away the ability for, in this case, actors to step into the shoes of other people, but then it also is trying to tell us as just everyday people, hey, don't step into the shoes of other people. Don't try and imagine what it would be like to be in that person's shoes. And if you take that away, whether it is from actors on screen, which again, when we talk about films, when we talk about television, right, we talk about how that is very much a part of culture, right? Politics being downstream from the culture, something that's commonly talked about, right? Culture is such an incredibly important thing. And if you were to take away this one aspect of the filmmaking process, and you were to say, nope, if there's a gay character, you have to be gay. If there is a character, that, basically it gets to the point of it being ridiculous, because Sir Ian McKellen, I think, also does a great job pointing this out, saying that, well, hey, he's playing a wizard. So you're saying that only wizards can play wizards? Oh, wait, wizards aren't real. How does that work? Or, hey, we're playing fictional characters. Wait a minute. That fictional character doesn't exist. How can I possibly portray that fictional character if the character itself doesn't actually exist? You see how it gets pretty ridiculous, and I think Sir Ian McKellen does a really great job of being able to explain that. But getting back just to Garfield's comments, I think that he is doing, again, a really good job here of trying to say, hey, we have two conversations going on. If we're talking about respect for the human person, that is something that he's on board with. And again, that's something that I think all of us should be on board with, is the respect for the human person and the dignity of the human person. Whereas if we're talking about the other side of it, which is this ability to have empathic, again, it's so hard to say because I want to say empathetic, empathic imagination, meaning the ability to empathize with somebody, putting ourselves in their shoes, and acting is one of the best ways for us to be able to do that. As someone who has done musicals throughout my life, I know that, and even just regular plays throughout my life, I know that when you put yourself into the shoes of a character, and that character is not exactly like who you are, it's able to help you understand a little bit more of their psyche, and that in itself helps us to understand one another. And that's what humanity is about. It's about us understanding each other and trying to help each other to be the best persons that we can. And obviously, bringing in a little bit of faith into this to help each other get to heaven should be our ultimate goal. And one of the ways that we can do that, though, is by empathizing with other people, stepping into their shoes, trying to understand where they're coming from, because that's the only way that we're ever going to be able to reach out to them, ever able to have conversations with them, ever able to learn from them, etc. And so Sir Ian McKellen also adds to this discussion, and once again, I think he's been at the forefront of this for a long time, because if you can go back to Ricky Gervais's show Extras, there is an excellent back and forth, mostly monologue. I mean, technically Ricky Gervais has a couple of responses there, but there's an excellent monologue by Sir Ian McKellen in that show where he talks about his role as Gandalf. At one point in the show, he says, Peter Jackson approached me and says, I want you to play Gandalf the Wizard. He says, now, Peter, I want you to realize, and I hope you realize that I am in fact not a wizard. And then it just goes off about his acting process. And I just thought it was so great because it's so relevant to this discussion, right? Saying, you're asking me to play this. I am not this, so just know that. And he's like, and it's like Peter Jackson's like, I know this, but I want you to use your acting skills to portray a wizard. Again, Ian McKellen's voice is amazing, and I always try to emulate it, and it's always going to fall short. But anyway, here is what it goes on here to say. Obviously, Lord of the Rings and Magneto from X-Men, amongst countless other roles, has Sir Ian McKellen played. It says, speaking with BBC media editor Amal Rajan about the criticism surrounding Helen Mirren taking on the role of Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir in the biopic Golda, McKellen said, there are two things. Is the argument that a Gentile cannot play a Jew? And is the argument, therefore, that a Jew cannot play a Gentile? And I think that's a great conversation, or rather, I think that's a great point. And also, I like that he's using the terms Gentile and Jew. Again, it just kind of gets the theologian in me like, oh, okay, this is piquing my interest a little bit more. He continued, is the argument that a straight man cannot play a gay part? And if so, does that mean I can't play straight parts? And that I'm not allowed to explore the fascinating subject of heterosexuality in Macbeth? I mean, yeah, it brings up saying, okay, so if it's going one way, right, if a straight person can't play a gay person in a movie, or if, in the case of, Helen Mirren, if a Gentile cannot play a Jewish character, well, then it would have to be the opposite. You would have to, again, based on pure reason and logic, you would have to say that the opposite is true. And then you would say, okay, so you're trying to tell Sir Ian McKellen that he can't play characters that are either heterosexual or where the sexuality of the character is not even ever even mentioned, like in the case of Gandalf the Grey. And McKellen again answers perfectly. Surely not. We're acting. We're pretending. And that is where it reminds me once again of the show Extras, because he's like, you are not actually John. You are pretending. And that is acting. And again, if you've never seen that clip, look it up. It's phenomenal. It's fantastic. But it's true. Acting is pretending. It's putting yourself into the shoes of a character. And this is, again, where we start to get into the more nuanced discussion that is being brought up here by John Trent. It says here, both actors make valid points. However, the discussion is a little bit more complex than both make it out to be. Actors should be cast to match up how their characters have been previously portrayed in the source material that is being adapted, or how the historical figure looked in real life. So I agree to that for the most part, to an extent. I guess my disagreement with that overall statement would be, I don't think that it necessarily has to be as hard-lined. For instance, there is a movie, for instance, where I believe it's called I'm Not There. I forget exactly what it is, but it's multiple actors are playing one musician character. It was a film where Heath Ledger was in there. And at one point, Tilda Swinton comes in and plays that part, and actually does a really good job playing that part. But you look at the film and you look at the context where it's different actors portraying different parts of that life, and all of their performances are meant to reflect the different parts of that actor's life. I think that is an example of where, hey, no, that makes actually a lot of sense to me. Even though Tilda Swinton is obviously a female playing a male role, that actually makes sense within the context of the story. Or even more recently, there has been a lot of back and forth with people who are part of my channel, as my Asgardian community, and I love my Asgardian community very much. But there were some that disagreed with my own take about the film The Green Knight. People did not like the fact that Dev Patel was cast as the character in that film. And they just didn't like it because he didn't seem to fit, at least complexion-wise, what a European, what a United Kingdom European at that time in history would have looked like, right? What an Anglo person would have looked like during that time. And I understand that. But at the same time, when I look at The Green Knight, I look at it as a fantasy story. So it's not trying to be a historical retelling. I think if you're going for historical retelling, I think absolutely that there is a little bit more, I guess you could say that the choice in casting and the seriousness of that casting needs to be more on par with what it actually would have been, right? Matching the person as they are historically. But when you're dealing with it from a fantasy perspective, right, a fantasy retelling, I do think that does give a little bit of wiggle room as far as being able. Again, I agree with John Trent, because John Trent's trying to say here is that it's a nuanced conversation, right? This is not just a pure black and white conversation, and I totally agree with that assessment. But I do think that it can't just be simply, all right, it has to be this person every single time. And again, it's kind of like this in between where I agree with John Trent, but then I also agree with what Andrew Garfield and what Sir Ian McKellen are bringing up, because it does behoove a lot of these actors to learn these skills, to play characters, to play parts that they otherwise wouldn't play. I look, for instance, at another example saying, hey, you look to a film like Tropic Thunder, right? And you look at the performance given by Robert Downey Jr. in that film. There's no way that film could be made today. But I look at that and I think to myself, I think that role is incredibly important because it helps to provide that aspect of commentary, and it asks the question of, how far is too far as far as actors portraying persons that are not of their race or not of their cultural background. Like, what are the limits there? And then also, too, about the impact that may have had on Robert Downey Jr. as far as portraying a character like that and also stepping into the shoes of someone like that with their history. And I think that's true of all actors. So that is all to say. Garfield and Ian McKellen, thank y'all for standing. Sorry, Ian McKellen, I'm sorry. Thank y'all very much for standing up for sanity in Hollywood. Again, they're not perfect people. I'm sure that some people are going to say, yeah, but what do you think about when they said this? Again, they're people. They're humans. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to say things that I don't agree with. But in this specific case, I think it's important because this is a big part of our conversation right now when it comes to films and television in Hollywood, is about who can play what role. And it's nice to know that there are at least some actors, some higher profile actors that are out there saying, no, shut up. This is something that we need to have a nuanced discussion with. It's one thing to say, hey, we should have respect for people. It's another to say, actors, you can't act. Right? It's another to say, as Sir Ian McKellen says, that you can't pretend, which is what acting is all about in the first place, right? We're acting, we're pretending, we're putting on these parts. I do think that there do have to be some limitations to that. For instance, you have the character of Black Panther. Well, obviously, you casting a white person as Black Panther, not really going to make a whole lot of sense there. And you can say the opposite for other things too. But I do think that there is a nuanced discussion. It depends for me on how the story is being retold, what kind of story it is, what the genre of the story is. And I think that that is ultimately how we need to look at it and have that nuanced discussion. I know that some people might disagree with me on that very take on that, especially with the Green Knight take. Because for me, I look at Dev Patel, I'm like, all right, he has an English accent. He was raised amongst English culture. And also the motivation too. I think intention is another important part. Not only is the Green Knight, as an example, a fantasy, but also the intention was not to say, ooh, we're going to specifically cast someone with Indian heritage to play this role because we want to have this weird sense of forced diversity. That wasn't the role, or rather, that wasn't the mindset of the directors. They rather had a casting call. They, they put the feelers out there. They put these, they had him read the script and said, hey, this is exactly fitting what we think of in the eyes of the character. And they were thinking of it from that perspective, and they were looking at it from the performance angle. And I think that ultimately for most roles, that's how it should be looked, is who's going to perform the role best. But the intention is important too, because if your intention is to say, oh no, we are going to race swap this character, I have a problem with that, because at that point you're trying to force identity politics. Whereas if you are honestly saying this person is the best person for this job based on the casting call that we had, and it doesn't happen to quite exactly match up to source material, I do think that there is a nuanced discussion that can be had there. But anyway, I think I've gone on for too long. What are y'all's thoughts about this? Do you agree with the comments made by Andrew Garfield and Sir Ian McKellen? Do you agree with the comments made here by John F. Trent? Again, saying that there's a nuanced discussion, that there have to be these limitations put onto this, right? That female characters should not be cast as male characters and other things like that. Or do you agree with my more nuanced approach as well? Again, I think all of us have, I know I've said that word nuanced a lot, but I think all of us have different nuanced approaches to this. And I don't think there is one singular right answer to this one question, but I do think what we can all agree on is what Andrew Garfield points out, that one, we should respect people. Right, we should have respect for the dignity of the human person. I think that all of us can come together on that, and I think that all of us can agree on the second point made here by both Andrew Garfield and also by Ian McKellen, which is that it's acting, it's pretending. It's supposed to be people pretending to be people that they are not, and that can result and be and exist in a wide variety of fashions. So anyway, let me know your thoughts about this and anything else I mentioned in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, light that fire button over on Odyssey. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my March Patreon Subscribe Star and Locals members. Starting off first with my Patreon members, animation commentator Brandon, let's go Brandon, Brian P., Christopher Bowman, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father, Father Damian Cook, Fuzz Aldrin, Garrett Searles, Hannibal Grimm, Harold Francis, Hymir Ari Hymason, Inflamed Wood, Jacob Juice, Jeff Toon, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Gomer Kyle 79, Laura, the Modern Major General Story, Mike Jackson, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mondo Spieler, Mr. Peabody, On to June, Orange Chat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Rosetta Allen, Stan Andrian, Miss Martin Muses, Theodore Bendon, Tina Bojan, and of course Tina B, the Empress of the Universe. Also a shout out to my Subscribe Star members, starting off with Trent Johnson, Matt 317, UAB Mad Dog, Mike Jackson, Storm Tracker, The R, Nosferatu Gatsu, Stan 4, John B, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss / the new number 2, J-Rod the Beer Guru, and ZK-Man. And a final shout out to my Locals members, Kara Tharp, UAB Mad Dog, Mike Jackson, and Robert Barnes. And lastly, a huge shout out to my newest Locals member, Brett D90. Thanks, man. Thank you all so very much for being supporters, monthly supporters of the channel. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every single live stream and every single video, please check out the pinned, the very top link in the video description. It is noted as the Willow link there. It'll bring you to basically a link tree of all the different places that you can support on Patreon, Subscribestar, or on Locals. And also there are other tiers that you can get access to as well, including an Army of Asgard level where you get not only the shout out, but you also get access to a giveaways channel that I have on my Discord, where you get offers of giveaways, or rather you get access to giveaways of 4K titles, Blu-rays, digital codes, all kinds of stuff, steelbooks. It's just, I'm giving away stuff all the time over there, and it's a lot of fun as well. So go check that out if you're interested. There's also the Keeper of the Bifrost level, which is the higher level up than that, and you get everything from the previous tiers. Plus, you get access to a once or twice a month podcast that I do with John the Flickpick Flickinger, where you get to ask us Q&A, right? You get to ask us questions, any question that you like, movie or non-movie related. We will answer them once, maybe twice a month. We're trying to work on a second opportunity for us to have a show, but right now it's at least once a month. So again, you get access with that with the Keep of the Bifrost level. And then there is the Chosen of Valhalla level, the very premium level, where you get access to all of those things. Plus, you get to be featured on the channel once a month with me and the other Chosen members, where we talk about movies and stuff. Anything really that the Chosen want to talk about. And it's always a very fun discussion. We usually have about 3.5 hour discussion. So again, that's what you get access to at the Chosen of Valhalla level. Also, you get a free t-shirt during your first month. All you need to do is just let me know what t-shirt you want from the store, and also their size, location, etc. And I send those out anywhere in the world. Anyway, you guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Thank you all so very much again for your love and for your support. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.